Oh, my head. What happened?
Who are you? How do you know my story?
What do you mean? Who are you?
You know who I am. You've been narrating my story this entire time, claiming it to me.
Listen, man, I don't know what you're talking about. It's all right here.
That's a coloring book.
What? No, it's a cipher. Listen, you wouldn't understand.
Whatever. How did you get this book?
It just showed up on my computer.
Your what?
My computer. My boss sends me things to read and say, then he edits it down and uploads it.
What the hell are you talking about? You're telling my story to other people? Profit?
Oh, no, we don't make any money. It's just a hobby.
What? You're doing this for fun?
Well, yeah.
Okay, so your boss. Who are they?
I don't know. I've never met them.
I guess I can't be mad. I've never met mine either.
You have a boss?
Yes, he's the one who gave me this mission in the first place. He contracted souls to work for me to take down this realm.
Did he tell you why?
He said that my story would be known the world over, and that I would live in perpetuity for passers-by to experience my journey and see how noble and heroic I am.
We have the same boss, don't we? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the legendary Summoner playthrough of Terraria. This is part 2, where we're going to be tackling hard mode. So if you didn't see the part before this, which was pre-hard mode, last episode is going to be linked down in the description. I spent a long time on this series, so I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed.
What are you doing?
I'm reading the story.
Can you, do it somewhere else? I'm trying to brood here.
You brought me in here, man. Just deal with it. Let it feed your ego or something.
What if you wore this hat?
Why do you have this?
Don't ask questions.
Anyways, back to hard mode. Following the defeat of the Wall of Flesh, the entire world begins to change. New biomes start to appear, harder enemies spawn in existing biomes, and well, that's actually really just it. That's my biggest gripe with hard mode. By this point, you have a general roadmap of your world and how you can explore it. But when you enter hard mode, there's really no incentive to continue exploring and finding all the loot. It instead comes from enemies, enemy drops to be specific. No longer are you slowly just exploring these caves and finding chests and items that will help you in re-exploring areas or going even further into that area. It's just killing the enemies. And the enemies suck. When you start out in hard mode, pretty much everything can and will kill you in one shot, especially in legendary mode. Alright, we're gonna go crazy. We're gonna do something a little stupid. Early hard mode summoner is probably the worst time in the game other than pre-boss to be a summoner, and it feels like it's actively the worst in the entire game. Well, why is that? Well, it's a lot of compacting factors when we talk about the overall design of early hard mode. So let's just go through the progression of all the other classes, and we'll talk about Summoner within the context of that as we go. So how should you progress as a normal character? Well, using the hammer that's dropped from the Wall of Flesh, we can break these evil altars that will release the hard mode ores into the world, which really is the only reason for us to explore something to actually go and collect rather than kill. The problem is that 99 times out of 100, the player just beelines for the evil closest biome, breaks a ton of the altars, and then just mirrors home. Is it a good mechanic? Every time this happens, you aren't valiantly exploring uncharted territory. You're just zooming past all the enemies, breaking as much as possible, and running away. There's no way at this point in progression that you would live and stand a fighting chance against some of these enemies. It doesn't really just feel good or rewarding, it's just weird. There's no sense of accomplishment. It wouldn't change anything if it just happened after the Wall of Flesh, in my opinion. I don't know if I'm the only one who feels this way, but I feel like this might warrant a second look. Okay. I do like the way that something like Calamity handles this, but I think it can be done in a bit more of a casual way where we don't lock some of the other more powerful armors behind, the number of mechanical bosses that we kill. I just think there's a happy medium that we can find here. Anyways, let's talk about the ores. These come in 3 different tiers, and you only get 1 from each tier per world. Overall, they don't really differ too much, but people have a definite preference for some of the ones that they have in between. The first tier, which can only be mined with a molten pickaxe, is the cobalt or palladium. When we get enough of that, you then make a pickaxe of that corresponding ore to go up to the next tier, which is orichalcum or mithril. We need pickaxes of those as well, and their corresponding anvils for more hard mode crafting recipes. Finally, when we get to the final tier of adamantite or titanium, you could make pickaxes, but you really just want the forges, which is used for even more hard mode crafting recipes, or the armor, or just their bars for other recipes. It's absolutely easier said than done in hard mode, but overall, I do kind of like this tiered ore mechanic. You do get a small sense of progression in tools that you have in pre-hard mode that you don't really get for the rest of the game, and it forces you into this newly dangerous world that you have found yourself in. You'll typically find cool materials from enemies while you look or just kind of fight for your life for 4 hours. And this time it does actually feel rewarding. Along with a new anvil and a forge, you can make new armor. Except, where's the summoning helmet? Well, guess what? We don't get one. Summoner is the only class that doesn't get ore armor. We do get something like the forbidden armor, but I don't really ever see anyone use this because at this point in the game, this is where the classes really start to take off in their identities. And we really get to get cool weapons and accessories. The problem with the frost armor and the forbidden armor is that they kind of split the difference. They're not best for any one class, they're good for all-arounders. But we're playing summoner here, so we don't want all-arounder, we want summoner. Speaking of these weapons, Ranger gets cool new guns and something like the Daedalus Stormbow, which rains arrows from the sky. Magic gets a whole new NPC and several different weapons to accommodate a variety of playstyles. And Melee gets a lot more defense, and some weapons that give them range for when the defense isn't really even enough. Summoners get spiders. Lots and lots of spiders.
The spider staff, the queen spider staff, spider mask, breastplate, and pants. So we go from 31 defense and 6351 to 36 defense, so 5 more defense, and less damage. Fuck.
So it's finally time we start touching on what exactly is wrong with hard mode progression as a summoner specifically. Public enemy number 1 is this spider cave. Killing black recluses, we can get the spider armor, the spider staff for a new minion, and the queen spider staff for a new sentry. The spider armor is great armor for us, aside from its pitiful 20 defense, which is only 5 more than the obsidian, but it does give us 3 minion slots and a lot more minion damage as a set bonus. I'll talk about the spider minions in just a moment, but first let's talk about this new sentry. The Queen Spider Staff does decent damage, and it excels at hitting enemies on the ground, and it's our first really consistent sentry. A lot of people skip over the Deerclops one and don't have a sentry in pre-hard mode, but every summoner picks up the Spider Sentry. Again, sentry shouldn't be your main source of damage unless you're doing like a specific sentry challenge, but it's a good supplemental damage in a lot of situations. Now, I don't consider myself arachnophobic, but I really do hate these spider minions. Let's talk about the upsides first. The main idea of these minions is that they can climb and latch onto walls, giving them really good mobility in caves. This lets them track enemies better than typical flying minions or grounded minions, but if you aren't anywhere where there are any walls, it all kind of falls apart. They do latch on enemies, but if they disconnect, like when you get too far, they need a platform to land on to try and jump back onto them. And even when they do latch on, the damage isn't really that great, and it has diminishing returns. So this is where we're going to get a little bit into the nitty gritty of the math on these minions and why I have such an issue with them. Each spider comes with 2 effects that you can't really see. The first is an internal cooldown effect. This is how often the spider can hit an enemy. It happens a lot with different melee enemies so that they, don't hit every single frame. The internal cooldown effect for the spider minions is about 0.33 seconds, so a spider can hit an enemy about 3 times a second. The second effect, and I'm just going to read directly from the wiki for this, is 15 frames of static invulnerability for the enemy that they hit. This means that multiple spiders are capped at 4 hits a second. Therefore, the 4th, 5th, and 6th spiders attacking an enemy will not be able to hit at the same rate as the first 3, with each one only adding an extra hit per second. As a result, the maximum number of hits for spiders will be capped at 12 times per second with 6 spider minions. For example, 3 spiders will attack an enemy at 9 times per second, but 6 spiders will only attack at 12 times per second. 11 spiders will also only attack an enemy 12 times per second. With only 3 spider minions, the invincibility frames do not actively come into play, since their internal hit cooldown lasts longer than the duration of the invincibility frames. Are you thoroughly confused yet? Because I definitely am. Basically, you get diminishing returns for the number of spiders that you summon, and to have that on a weapon with this AI, it just doesn't really bode well for early hard mode.
Hey, what's up? Editing Classics here. I also wanted to mention in this section that each spider only takes up 75% of a minion slot. So you're incentivized to have more minions, which is probably why it has diminishing returns, but the fact that it does is still very silly to me. I just wanted to mention that.
Yes, like I mentioned, in caves, when you're looking for all these different ores, the spider minions are really good, but a lot of progression in hard mode is going to be related to bosses, things that fly and have a lot of movement speed that the spiders are just terrible against. So if we can't use the spiders, what then should we use? Well, let's actually go all the way back to the beginning and talk about Abigail. Abigail surprisingly scales amazing in early hard mode, and this is mainly thanks to the weapon that we're going to get from the Wall of Flesh, which I'll talk about in just a moment. To really understand why that whip specifically pairs well with Abigail, let's talk about Abigail herself. Each minion summon slot increases her base damage and her movement speed, so that means that she can keep up with those aerial and fast-paced moving enemies and do pretty good damage, especially when combining it with this whip. This one is the one that drops from the Wall of Flesh. It's the weirdest of the whips because it doesn't actually apply any tag damage. Instead, it gives the enemy a debuff that triggers when a minion hits it, which deals 2.75 times the damage of the summon hit. Since the Firecracker scales with high base damage minions, like Abigail, it can scale pretty well into the late game. The Cool Whip. It just does the normal tag damage, and it'll spawn a snowflake minion that has the AI of just, going around and hitting whatever's closest. After weapons and armor are in order, it's time that we rejoin the other classes in hard mode progression. Wyverns for wings using the frost cores, mimics for star veils, corrupted mimics for flesh knuckles. Our first goal in hard mode is to defeat a mechanical boss. Twins and the Destroyer are both really great choices, but require different kinds of builds, and I recommend that you take on Skeletron Prime last, especially in Legendary mode. By defeating one of the mechanical bosses, a lot happens in the world. First, the spread of the evil biomes is slowed, which is nice, but we've already prepared for that by lifting all of our bases into the sky. The Steampunker can move in, who sells the Contaminator to help purify the world even further, so that's a great bonus to help keep us safe. Additionally, Light Fruit will begin to spawn in the jungle to get us to a maximum of 500 base health, which will go to 600 with the Life Force Potion, a whole 120 more than the 480 we have at the moment. The Old One Army is also upgraded after the first mechanical boss, which gives us new armor and sentries, which are really good for this point in progression. And finally, the mechanical bosses will drop hallowed bars and souls, which we can use to make different weapons and armor. Hallowed armor, we actually do get a summoner helmet, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. All of these compounding factors makes the second mechanical boss that you choose to clear much easier. I chose the twins first, because with the drops from the twins,
The destroyer becomes so much more easier to deal with, and I have a fun little idea in mind for the destroyer. I'll get into a bit of the specifics of why the destroyer is specifically second, but the most important information is that its head deals 420 base contact damage in Master Mode. No armor at this point in the game is going to live that. We're going to need something else, something that the twins can provide us. But before we tackle them, we need to take on the Queen Slime for a new minion. But before that, we need to defeat the pirates. The pirates are usually good for just utility things. Weapons like the pirate staff are just not great. They're fine, they're grounded enemies, which is terrible, but they do okay contact damage, but it just takes a lot of effort to make them work, and they just simply aren't worth your time. Definitely a product of the 1.2 era. What is worth your time is the discount card, the gold ring, and the lucky coin, which are great for saving money over the course of a playthrough, and the black spot, which is a mount with infinite flight time. After about, and I shit you not, 14 pirate invasions, we finally get the black spot to drop. I didn't know this at this point, but this was foreshadowing that in this playthrough, I'm not going to be getting any drops from events. It kind of sucks. This is another reason I actually really dislike early hard mode, is that it's very easy to get into a death loop. Since your defense is so low, your damage is so low, it's very often that you'll spawn in your bedroom, things will spawn around you if you're in something like the Pirate Invasion, Goblin Invasion, Blood Moon, and a little bit later, the Solar Eclipse, where you just get spawn camped. And especially with summoners, you have to drink a potion, summon all your guys, and get the hell out of your house, and then you're just left with no NPCs, and you have to wait for them to come back. That's the most annoying part of hard mode, and the pirates definitely do this all the damn time. 14 pirate invasions, remember, 14 times. Oh my god. Immediately after my 14th pirate invasion, because I was just so tired of doing this, I rushed over to the Queen Slime to get her minion. Her first phase has her grounded, spitting out a ton of bouncy balls for us to dodge. And aside from the contact damage, the only thing changed in this fight is that there's going to be more projectiles, and their orientation is a bit randomized. I recommend an arena with lava at the bottom so that her ads die to the lava, so that your spiders will latch onto her during her first phase. During her second phase, you summon Abigail, and you just go left and right. When she enters her second phase, which is where she begins flying, you can quickly mount onto the black spot. Again, you have infinite flight in this mount. So if you were using spiders in the first phase, now is a great time to switch to Abigail. And you can min-max a bit more by ditching your boots and your wings for damage accessories if you really, really want to, although I don't think that's necessary at this point in time. Abigail will sometimes get a hit in while moving, but now most of our damage is entirely going to be from this whip stacking. You can kind of tell when the Queen Slime is going to slam when that happens, so just swap to the other direction. In essence, she isn't really that hard, but the more projectiles and random orientation make it much more difficult of a fight. This is why defense is very important. You can tank quite a few of these projectiles before you're in any real danger. If you keep up this honestly pretty simple pattern, you can defeat the Queen Slime in a pretty easy fashion. Our reward from her is going to be the Blade Staff, which is easily the most interesting minion in the entire game. At this point, Summoner's damage can really start to fall off if you're not careful with the combinations that you're using, and it's really for a simple reason: defense. Minions, the normal archetypes, not like the Abigail archetype, thrive off of numbers, the sheer number of hits offsetting the base damage that an enemy might have. But now, enemies have defense that begin to rival the base damage that we have. Yes, we have things like Sharktooth Necklace and Ichor Flask to lower that defense and increase our damage, but what if we flip this entire idea on its head? This is the entire concept for the Blade Staff. When I first got this weapon, I was honestly convinced that it was terrible. It does an entire 6 base damage, but this base damage is extremely deceptive. The blades also ignore 25 of an enemy's base defense, allowing for the full 6 damage to be dealt. Combine that with extremely fast aerial movement and a very quick attack pattern and tag bonuses, and the Blade Staff can quickly begin to pull ahead of some of the other weapons. Obviously, there are some issues with it. Weapon modifiers and damage accessories can often make or break a weapon, but the Blade Staff simply actually doesn't care about any damage modifications.
Let's take the Summoner's Emblem for example. It increases summon damage by 15%. What is 15% of 6? 0.9. Not even a full number. And to my knowledge, Terraria truncates this damage, so our new damage of 6.9 is actually just still 6. The Summoner Emblem does nothing. Yes, you can stack damage accessories to actually increase the damage, but it's not as useful if most of it's going to be truncated anyway. Additionally, with enemies that have more than 25 defense, a rare occurrence, but it will happen and very soon, the extra defense actually tanks our damage. All of this is to say that the percent damage increases to this weapon are not as good as our other typical summon weapons. What does work is the flat damage increases that we have, like tag damage, something that the Firecracker actually doesn't do. Do not, open your ears, do not, and I repeat, do not use the Firecracker with the Blade Staff. It is quite possibly the worst combination of whip and minion in the entire game at any point in progression. But wait, before we fight the twins, I actually highly recommend that you farm the old one's army for 45 Defender's medals. This will give you enough to buy the new armor from the Tavern Keep when you defeat a mechanical boss without actually having to do tier 2 of the invasion. We get nothing from drops from tier 2 other than Defender medals, so now is the best time to farm for these. So, with our newly acquired minion, it was finally time for the twins. But now that the twins have finally been defeated, it's time to talk loot and the changes to the world after the first mechanical boss. But first, a quick congratulations. That was without a doubt the worst part of the entire playthrough. From here on out, the Summoner will begin to rise in power. Every step of the progression will fuel our damage to the point where we are arguably the best class in the game, and we are going to need to be the best class in the game for the enemies that await us
near the end. Every mechanical boss drops hollowed bars, probably around 20. It's enough for a new weapon, but not enough for a whole set of armor. We have two options, the Durandal or the Optic Staff. The Durandal is an insane whip that gives us a ludicrous amount of attack speed as a buff. The Optic Staff is a staff that summons two little twins for us to fight, and oh man, I really, really want to like this weapon. I really do. I think its design is just amazing. But just like the Spider Staff and the Pirate Staff, it reeks of 1.2. The twins do excellent damage against slow enemies and hordes. That's what they excel at. I would recommend these over the Blade Staff, but the Durandal gives us more DPS, and the blades can take down the twins much more consistently. Once we have enough hollowed bars, we can make the Hallowed Armor set. It's not leagues better than the Spider Armor in damage. What, did you think we were actually going to get some defense? But it's the armor bonus that we want. A chance to dodge attacks. I'll explain those mechanics in the next fight. Just know that we really, really want something like this. Alternatively, you can get the new armor from the Barkeep, but I'm going to forego this for now because I have a very specific strategy in mind for the Destroyer. It's still not yet Destroyer time because now we have a date with the Blood Moon for perhaps my favorite minion in the entire game. By fishing in the Blood Moon during hard mode, we can challenge the Dread Nautilus. Historically, in previous runs of Summoner, I've had an extremely difficult time with this boss. But honestly, he's not that bad. Just go up when he shoots his projectiles and stay in place when he zooms around in a circle. And now it's time that I actually came clean about this strategy for the Destroyer. I had plans to use the Hollowed Armor and our new minion and everything else, but I was just doing some tests of the arena and I cheesed the Destroyer. I had on the armor from the old one's army for increased defense, and normally this is an awful fight because the legendary mode Destroyer is larger and his acceleration is increased, which means he's much harder to dodge. If you get hit by that 720 base damage head, it's all over instantly. Ironically enough, this increased acceleration is what kept him stuck in the living tree. Near the end, he did start getting close to me, but it was still very easy to dodge him. I was so unconfident in this attempt that I only have part of the fight recorded, and there's no audio because I was on a call with a friend just chatting about random stuff. I'm really sorry for this anticlimactic finish. I wish I could give more advice on the Destroyer, but this is all I got. Since this second mechanical boss doesn't actually unlock anything, it's immediately on to the third. There's no waiting or pussyfooting around. It's Skeletron Prime time. And honestly, it's probably the easiest to take on last. With the Durandal, the Cool Whip, the Sanguine Staff, the Hollowed Armor, and some random sentries, you have just enough damage to go in a huge figure 8 pattern to avoid him. I would highly advise that you focus on the skull and not really care about any of the appendages. They just take too long and it's not that much more to dodge, so that's why I just focused on the main skull. Ichor Flasks actually do work on him, unlike the Destroyer, so definitely use those as well. For some reason, I had a hard time with him, but I just laid out my arena as dungeon bricks so the bombs wouldn't break anything. Oh yeah, they do that in legendary mode, just be very careful. Other than that, he's just a bit bigger. You're really just aiming to not get hit by contact damage. That's really the only lose condition of the fight for summoners and probably everyone. A hard one to avoid, mind you, but with the dodge chances and the optional Rod of Discord, it should be an easy fight. I used Wings, Magiluminescence, Moonstone, Swiftness, and Well Stuff, just like the twins, and you should have enough speed to just clown around on him for a pretty easy win. Once the 3 mechanical bosses are defeated, the jungle is now upgraded. Chlorophyte is useless for us. We don't get anything, so I just instantly make a Plantera arena with a patented Osagoth tunnel. Before we actually fight Plantera, I wanted to say that I still don't like the progression of this. If you haven't noticed, pretty much everything until Plantera for summoners ended after the twins. You don't get anything from the second mech. You don't get anything from the third mech. It's not different for any of the other classes. Why? I get the idea of like choosing a mechanical boss for your specific class based on the souls that they drop, but I don't really know anyone who uses something other than like the Mega Shark, which I don't even know which one that drops from. But you have such insane weapons already, like the Daedalus Stormbow, like things like the Crystal Storm or whatever. Like you just have a lot of good stuff right now, and the weapons from the mechanical bosses don't really matter. You just take on whichever one is easiest. And usually it's going to be the twins. I just think that this kind of needs a restructuring or rethought about the design of this section of the game, because I think for most classes, and especially summoners, it's just boring. It's not fun. I just don't like it. I get that they want you to be in like this perilous new world after defeating the Wall of Flesh, because lore-wise, that's what was keeping the evil of the world at bay or whatever. I get it from like a lore perspective, but from a game design perspective, I think that it's just lacking a lot, especially when you come from what is, touted as perfect progression of pre-hard mode. Every boss got you something for every class. Even if that something wasn't amazing, it was something new and something that was in consideration, as well as with the new stuff that you got from the other bosses, right? That just doesn't happen in hard mode. It just doesn't, right? And I think that's overall just the flaw with it. And that doesn't really happen post Plantera, but it happens here. And I think this is honestly the weakest part of Terraria, and why I really wanted to make this series, to really point out the cracks in the ideas of it. If you want to see this from like a new player's perspective, I highly recommend that you go watch Thworbin play with a blind player and try and figure out the progression of this and all that. It's a really good insight. But as for someone who's been playing this for years, probably over a decade at this point, definitely over a decade at this point, it's just sad when I'm in this part of the game. I don't even hate like spawning in and having nothing as much as I hate this part of the game. Again, I just think that it needs a little bit of a restructure. Nothing like too insane, just a couple small changes. I don't have any advice for that because I'm not a game designer, but these are just the issues that I have. So I wanted to air them out before we started the Plantera fight, because Plantera fight onward is really good. So let's do that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a game of Can I Explain the Fight Before It's Over? Really, the only thing different about the Plantera fight in this phase is that she moves a little quicker and fires more projectiles. This doesn't change the overall strategy of just going in a really big fucking circle. The optic staff actually works best here, in my opinion, since they do work best against slow moving targets. And when we're spinning her like this, even though she herself is moving fast, relatively she's not moving that fast at all. When Plantera reaches about half health, you need to back the fuck up. She'll explode into many jittery, weird tentacles. And now it's time that you have to dive into the Osagoth tunnel. Her tentacles in this phase are faster, and they spawn pink thorns around you. Really, these only serve to get rid of your Hallow dodge, so just assume that you never have it in this fight. They also reflect projectiles, so sometimes your retinaser shots will sometimes bounce back and hit you, and it just makes you pretty sad. It doesn't do a lot of damage, it just makes you sad. Other than that, you just fall. You keep her barely on screen, and your minions will just do most of the damage. If you hit the end of the tunnel, you can either Rod of Discord out above her or set up a teleporter and just kite her back up to the arena. It's kind of sad that there isn't much to say about Plantera's fight in Legendary mode, or just kind of in general. It's really just an unceremonious way that ushers us into the next progression stage. But don't worry, if you came here to see someone suffer, the next part of the challenges make my 4-month-long battle with the Wall of Flesh look like a cakewalk. I'll see you guys soon for part 3. All right, dude. How was that? Do you feel cool now?
What? No, the journey isn't done yet. Finish the story.
Boss is telling me that we need to take a break so that he can edit it.
What the fuck does that mean?
Dude, I don't know. There's also a line here to ask people to like and subscribe. I don't think these are real words.
Perhaps it's a ritual for more souls.
Oh, yeah. Could you explain more about that souls thing? Why do you need souls?
Those are the minions.
What?
The minions. Their souls. They sold their souls to me long ago, and now they're just paying their dues.
Why? Why would they sell their souls to you? What did you give them?
Well, it was so long ago that honestly I don't remember. What the fuck is content?